Welcome back to the Brazilian Football Channel. Today, I'm going to help you to understand some of the singularities and uniquenesses of Brazilian football, our national derbies. And I'm going to help you figure out an answer to this difficult question. What is Brazil's greatest derby? Now, stay there with us and don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Now, if you're in Europe, it's not very difficult to answer this question. If you are in Spain, for instance, Spanish football greatest derby is, without a doubt, Real Madrid versus Barcelona. It's the national derby. If you go to Portugal, the answer again is not very difficult. Greatest derby there is Porto versus Benfica. Now, Sporting fans might be angry about that answer, but they will not be able to argue against it very much. And again, if you go to Italy, the answers will not vary too much. It will be anything amongst Inter Milan versus Milan, Juventus versus Inter Milan, or Juventus versus Inter Milan, right? One of these three derbies will be considered the national derby in Italy. And going from country to country in Europe, the answer will now be very limited. In Germany, Dortmund versus Bayern Munich. In Holland, anything among the three big rivals, PSV, Feyenoord, and Ajax. And in France, the answer might have changed along the years, but nowadays, without a doubt, the greatest derby is Olympique Marseille versus PSG, right? Now, if you come down here to Brazil, the answer is not that obvious, and I will help you understand why. Remember what I mentioned a few videos ago about how Brazilian football began and the logistics of the country. Brazil, as you might know, is a very, very big country, enormous. And in the past, traveling from one edge of the country to the other was very difficult. The logistics, the transportation, infrastructure. And that's why the first championships that we had here were not national, but instead they were very local state championships. And the state championships remain a tradition until today. They still are, there in taking great part of our calendar, and it's a topic of discussion. Many people are against them, but they are a tradition, and they will continue for many years. I bet so. And that's why in Brazil, local derbies are very important. They are full of rivalry and full of history and tradition. And not only that, they really have a national appeal. Now, one could say, wow, in Brazil, Corinthians and Flamengo is a great derby. It's a great match. It's a derby, perhaps, but it's not a tough rivalry as other, local derbies that we have here. Corinthians and Flamengo are the largest fan base here in Brazil. They alone, they have a bigger population than many countries in Europe and in other parts of the world. But it's not really a national derby like Real Madrid versus Barcelona because they are not from the same city. And that here in Brazil counts a lot. Now, I'll give you a hint of some of the greatest derbies in Brazil, and you will get closer to the answer. Let's begin with Grenal. Grenal is a match between Grêmio and Internacional, the greatest teams of Rio Grande do Sul, our largest state in the south of the country. And it's a national derby. It's a local derby, but it's a derby of national appeal because these two teams are great in Brazil. Grêmio has grabbed the Libertadores Cup three times and has won the National League two times. Internacional has grabbed the Libertadores two times and also has grabbed the National League three times. So they have important trophies. In addition to these national, international championships, they have also won world championships according to FIFA. There is a controversy because Grêmio won the Intercontinental Cup, the Toyota Cup that used to happen in Japan, and Internacional has won the FIFA World Cup, and well, they discuss about it, but well, they can be considered really world championships. So Grenal is a great derby in Brazil. Is it the greatest? Wait and see. Let's go a little up north moving on in the map, and let's get now to Paraná. In the state of Paraná, the greatest derby is Atletiba. It's the match between Atlético Paranaense and Curitiba, and I could mention that as a derby of national interest because these two teams have both each won the National League one time, and it's the only state in which two clubs out of the four top states of Brazil have won the National League. So it is a derby of national interest. In addition, I could say that Atlético Paranaense has been runners-up of Libertadores Cup one time, so it's not a small club. It's an important club here in Brazil. Atletiba is a national derby, is a derby of national interest. Now let's move on and get to the state of São Paulo. In São Paulo, we have four big clubs. Santos and Palmeiras is a big derby, but I will stay in the state of São Paulo, restricted to two big derbies there, so that I will not take too much time of you. Now, Corinthians and São Paulo is a great derby in the state of São Paulo. These two teams have won important championships. The World Championship, São Paulo has won 3 times, and Corinthians 2 times. National Leagues, 7 times Corinthians, 6 times São Paulo, and Cups also here in Brazil. Corinthians has won the Brazil Cup 3 times. Libertadores, São Paulo has 3, and Corinthians has 1. So it is a great derby in Brazil of huge national interest, huge fan bases. It is a great derby. Is it the greatest in Brazil? Again, the answer is not that simple. Because in the state of São Paulo, again, one will easily argue that the greatest derby in São Paulo is not Corinthians and São Paulo, but Corinthians and Palmeiras, because it's a big rivalry. They are traditional rivals. They really, really hate each other. And again, Palmeiras too has won many important championships. It is the club in Brazil that has most national leagues and has also grabbed 1 Libertadores Cup. So Corinthians and Palmeiras is a great derby in São Paulo. It's the greatest of the state. But again, is it the greatest of Brazil? You know the answer. It's not that obvious. Let's move now to the state of Rio de Janeiro, where we have clubs like Botafogo, Fluminense, great clubs, huge importance. But again, I will be restricted to 2 derbies there in this state, okay? Let's talk first about Fla-Flu. Fla-Flu could easily be appointed as Brazil's most famous derby abroad, easily. For long, Fla-Flu has been a derby full of charm and rivalry and important trophies and titles. It is Brazil's most famous derby abroad. I would easily bet that. And again, trophies, too many. Flamengo has won the World Championship 1 time in 1981 with a big team with Zico and Nunes and Junior and other important players. And they have grabbed the Libertadores Cup 1 time. They have grabbed the National League 6 times. So Flamengo has important trophies, is a big club, and their rivals, Fluminense, also have grabbed many important trophies. They were Libertadores runners-up 1 time. They have grabbed the National League 4 times and the Cup 1 time. Fla-Flu is a charming, beautiful derby, but again, it's not Brazil's greatest. Because in the state of Rio, one would say that Vasco and Flamengo is the greatest derby. It involves really the greatest rivalry, and they have more fans than Flamengo and Fluminense. And Vasco too has won important trophies here in Brazil. They have grabbed 1 Libertadores Cup. They have grabbed the Mercosul Cup, that's equivalent in Europe to Europa League. They have many important trophies and great fans, many fans in Brazil. Vasco and Flamengo is the greatest rivalry in Rio de Janeiro, and again, is not Brazil's greatest derby. So what would it be? Let's move now to another state, and let's mention now Cruzeiro and Atlético Mineiro. This is the biggest derby of Minas Gerais, and again, they have many fans. It's a derby of national importance, national interest. And these two clubs have grabbed important titles too. Cruzeiro, for instance, has won the Libertadores Cup 2 times. They have won the Brazilian Championship 4 times and the Cup 5 times. So Cruzeiro is an important club here in Brazil. They are very respected, and it's not different with the Atlético Mineiro. Atlético Mineiro has won the Libertadores Cup 1 time and the Brazilian Championship 1 time, the league 1 time too. So they have important titles, important trophies, and they have many fans in Brazil. Cruzeiro and Atlético Mineiro is surely a derby of national interest, but it's not Brazil's greatest. So this would be Brazil's top derbies, but there are other derbies of importance too. I would mention, for instance, here in the Northeast, we have many, many fans of football. We here in the Northeast of the country are very passionate about football, and two big derbies here have national interest. For example, Santa Cruz and Sport. Santa Cruz and Sport is the greatest derby of the state of Pernambuco. They have many fans, and Sport has won one national league and one cup. And Santa Cruz, in 1975, they were semi-finalists of the national championship. So they at least once have achieved a great campaign. And this derby is a derby of certain national interest, but is not considered the greatest derby of the Northeast. The greatest derby of Northeast is here in my city, involving the rivals Vitória and Bahia. This derby is nationally known as Bavi, and is a derby of national interest. Um, these two clubs have great campaigns in Brazil. Our rivals, Bahia, they have grabbed the National League 2 times, and we, the fans of Vitória, we are proud to say that our club has reached the final of the two most important competitions in Brazil. We were runners-up of the National Championship, Brazil League, and we have also reached the final. We were runners-up of the Cup, Brazil Cup. So Bahia and Vitória, Bavi, is a derby of national interest. And last but not least, I would also mention a great derby of the north of the country, involving the rivals Remo and Paysandu. Repa, it's how this derby is known here in Brazil, Repa. Remo grabbed the third division once, and Paysandu has grabbed the second division 2 times. And this is a derby of certain national interest because they have many fans in the north. It's surely the greatest derby of the north of the country, and is one of Brazil's important derbies that I would choose to mention here. So finally, what is Brazil's greatest derby? There is no answer to that. There is no answer to that. If you come here to Brazil and say, this is Brazil's greatest derby, it will be a big discussion. People from different states will argue and will shout and will say this is wrong, and they will have good arguments to put on the table and to bring to the discussion to defend their side. So here in Brazil, we don't have a national derby, one derby that would be considered Brazil's greatest, but we have all of these great derbies, which brings another singularity and uniqueness to Brazilian football. This is why here in Brazil, the National League is so tightly disputed and so difficult to predict. Here in Brazil, if you begin the year and try to say that the champion will be this or that team, you have great chances of getting it wrong at the end of the year. And in the same, if you do this in the next year and in the following years, it's very, very hard, which is not difficult to do if you go to Italy or if you go to Spain or to Portugal. You can even predict what will be the national champions of these leagues in 2037, for instance, and we'll have great chances of getting it right. Here in Brazil, it's almost impossible to predict who is going to be the champion in the beginning of the year. Even perhaps in the middle of the championship, you will be sure about who is going to be the champion. Let's say 9 or 10, dates before the end of the championship. So this is a very, very interesting and one of my favorite traces of Brazilian football. Our league is very, very thrilling, well disputed, and unpredictable. Well, that should be all for today. I hope I have helped you understand this peculiarity of Brazilian football, and I thank you for your presence. I see you next time. Bye bye.